And they continue to work with churches and run schools there that serve over 1,000 children of former slaves. So a pretty amazing story, Marion. We're really glad to have you with us. Thank you. To his right, A.T. Shabaka is a Dartmouth 70 and Tuck 71 graduate. He is the retired Divisional Risk Management Director for the Lloyd's TSB Group. Prior to his time at Lloyd's, he spent 33 years at Citibank, undertaking a variety of roles, including global executive positions. And he was the head of corporate banking credit risk for emerging markets at Citigroup, which oversaw investments in 77 countries. He's the board of the EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, which is a pan-African financial institution, as well as the board of Citibank Kazakhstan, which I didn't know existed until I read the bio. I might switch my checking account now to Citibank. Yeah. And here at Dartmouth, he's on the board of both the Tucker Foundation and also the Wheelock Society. He has also served as the president, CEO, and a board member of an organization called Opportunity International, which helps to improve poverty-stricken communities throughout the world through microfinance services and products. So, BT, we're very glad to have you. Thanks. And as well, I'm delighted to introduce Luann Zurlo, who's a Dartmouth 87. She is the clinical professor of finance at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. She is an entrepreneurial executive, a former Wall Street analyst, and currently a professor of finance at Catholic University. In the 90s, Luann worked for Goldman Sachs and was ranked by Institutional Investor as one of the top Latin American telecommunication analysts of that period, and led a team of analysts covering 35 different companies. In 2002, she decided that she wanted to do something else, and she started a nonprofit called World Fund, which is dedicated to improving education quality throughout Latin America, and then structured partnerships with Harvard, Dartmouth, corporations and government officials to launch teacher training, literacy arts, science and math programs in Mexico and Brazil, and has impacted over 500,000 students through this nonprofit. She currently teaches at Catholic University, as I said. She has an MBA from Columbia, a Master of Arts in International Affairs from Hopkins. She earned her BA in history at Dartmouth. She currently sits on the board of World Fund, the LE's or Wheelock Society, and then also the Lehman Manhattan Preparatory School Advisory Board. She has also recently published a book called 15 Feet from the Pope, which I had a wonderful discussion with her about her experience in a very meaningful sabbatical, long-term sabbatical at St. Peter's in Rome. So Luann, it's truly a joy to have you with us. I'm not going to introduce myself necessarily, but I want you to know that my thoughts on identity have been shaped personally because I am one of 4 children. I'm the oldest. All of my 3 younger siblings are adopted internationally. So I grew up as a minority in my own family. Thought a lot about identity going from an only child with all the toys to one of 4 with no toys. Unable to speak the language of my brothers and sisters. So that makes you think about identity. But I also have spent some time working with an NGO in Sarajevo, Bosnia. I spent several years in Sarajevo, Bosnia with an organization that built community in post-war Bosnia among Bosnian Muslims, Serbian Orthodox, and Croatian Catholics. So that gave me a lot of thought on what is identity, who are we, and how do we understand ourselves in our relation to the other. In that regard, one of my primary thoughts on, or some of my primary thoughts on identity have been shaped through a book by Miroslav Volf, a Yale theologian who was with us, did a panel at the Wheelock Society conference last year. He wrote a very seminal book called Exclusion and Embrace. One quote to set our time. He says, "I am who I am in relation to the other. Hence, the will to be oneself, if it's to be healthy, must entail the will to let the other inhabit self. The other must be a part of who I am as I will to be myself." So he's saying a part of who we are and how God has created us, which is a reflection of how God is himself, is to include the other. So as Christians in the gospel, how do we think about who we are and who the other is in relationship to us? Inclusion and exclusion. Let me begin, and I'll set just a quick stage to say we have a little less than an hour now. I want to save at least the last 15 minutes for questions and answers. Okay? If during this time we really do want this to be interactive, I know that what gets said a lot in these kind of situations, but If somebody says something or talks about their story and you want to know a little bit more about it, raise your hand. We would love for this to be interactive. But if there are no questions, we're going to save that last period of time for Q&A. What I want to do is let these guys talk as much as possible. I'm going to step out of the way and just put some foundational questions and thoughts out there. And we'll hear stories that they've been thinking and the thoughts that they've been thinking over the past few weeks. So first, before we talk about including and excluding, we need to talk about what are we including and excluding from. And as a sort of a foundational basis, thinking about the gospel orientation. What does it do to our identity? And I'll phrase the question this way. What impact does the gospel, the good news of God's work in the world through the person of Jesus Christ, have on our identity as people, both individually and corporately or in community? How have you personally experienced that identity shift? How have you seen it in others, perhaps? And are there stories that you could share that would help somebody, if there's somebody here who you would say, perhaps, you know, I'm interested in faith, I'm interested in the integration of faith in my life or vocation, but I wouldn't consider myself a Christian. That's totally fine. We're very glad you're here. How would you phrase those stories to maybe help somebody who wouldn't come from a Christian perspective to see what that gospel shift means for us? So I want to open it up, and maybe, AT, we can talk about, would you kick this off for us? Any thoughts on gospel identity in your experience?
How much time are you giving me?
I'd love to say as much time as you need, but about 2 minutes. No, as much as
Okay, so yeah, I will share what I can as briefly as possible, and if there are follow-up questions, we can tackle them later. I am from the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo. I grew up in a family of 5. I was the baby, you know, in our family, in our village, which is called, and I'll see if you remember that, Benakajamba village. We had 2 parts of the village. There was the Christian, literally called the Christian part of the village, and the pagan part of the village. My parents, myself, we lived in the Christian part of the village. My grandparents were on the pagan part of the village. It was a Catholic mission in a station. So I grew up a Catholic, baptized Catholic, confirmed Catholic. Long story, fasting forward. I am now in a Presbyterian high school. Presbyterian missionaries from America say you cannot stay in our high school if you don't convert. For 2 years I resisted as a good Catholic, but I didn't have many choices. So after 2 years, I converted to becoming a Presbyterian. Baptized Presbyterian, confirmed Presbyterian. So for 3 years, I was president of the Youth for Christ. You know, in my high school, we went to villages, you know, preaching the gospel. What I learned about God and things godly, I learned at the Presbyterian High School of Libanga, because I went then for myself deep in Scripture. My knowledge of God was a head knowledge. I thought of myself as a Christian, you know, throughout. I sat on mission committees, finance committees of the church. I attended church every time. But then got married. Again, I'm just fast forwarding. You will have questions to fill the gaps. We get married after my education here, you know, at Dartmouth, and joining Citibank, working, you know, with them for a long time. I got married to a wonderful American woman from Minnesota. We met on this campus. So Priscilla and I moved to my country. I was smoking a lot before we got married. I used to smoke, you know, just a little bit after we got married. I started smoking even a lot more. She hated it because she grew up in a home where mom was a chain smoker and she couldn't stand it. So you can imagine the fights that we had just on that very issue. I used to go out with my friends and we would spend time drinking a lot, and I would come back, and it would be again quarrels, you know, where were you, etc. Priscilla, my wife, went to visit her parents in 1974. There she met Christ. Again, if you have questions, we can talk about it. She met Christ, came back, the issues of smoking that she had with me. And I continued to smoke a lot. I continued to drink a lot, and going out with my friends, staying up late a lot. She was no longer complaining about that. I smoked in our living room. She didn't make a comment. I went even into our bedroom, smoked there. She was not even commenting. I said, something is wrong with this woman. What happened to her? Obviously, Priscilla is excited. She wants me to know Christ because she had just had an encounter with Christ. I said, I know Christ. Remember, I am a Catholic, baptized, confirmed. I'm Presbyterian. You cannot, tell me anything about, becoming a Christian. Had lots of friends, missionaries, come to Bible study, go to this. You guys cannot teach me anything. Very proud man, wouldn't you say? Very proud man. Okay, I am going to be very brief. We went out on vacation to a village called Nsiamfumu, just by the borders with Angola, my wife and I. I spent time reading Agatha Christie and all novels that I could read in that missionary house that we were renting for $3 a week. I finished those books. There were nothing else but the Christian books now and Bibles. So Campus Crusade for Christ, some booklet, a brochure called 12 Steps or 10 Steps to Christian Maturity.